that's a good cultural tactic, and I just put this on broadcast right now, because since there's a lot of interaction with people on the Indian subcontinent, what Ben was saying was that that quick agreement, the yes.
That they do kind of sideways, yeah.
Yeah, in American culture, you kind of moving your head sideways, left to right. No.
Yeah.
But in the Indian culture, they don't really move their head sideways. You just over the chin in the same point and just kind of
nod your head down.
Your head. So your head down to the right, and do it really quick.
Right, and that has a variation too, just from the aspect of where you are in India.
Okay.
Not so many tech companies are in the eastern part or the western or the northern part of the country. Majority of it are kind of clustered around the southern part.
Another issue I had with the new teams are just cultural about when I first came back was caste. Caste made a big difference. I mean, some people just got pilloried because they were the wrong caste in our group. So they're whatever casting away the Brahmins who. Mm-hmm. But then they got low enough, like 3 castes below, the Brahmins would treat them like poorly. Poorly in teams, and they would undermine them and everything else. It was like that. Then they go the other way, so you're just like cultural clash inside. Because I worked with Tata, and we had hundreds of Indian consultants working on our teams, and you end up with these caste clashes. And it's like that was something that really had to overcome too, was understanding that dynamic.
That one could be difficult. There's when you're mentioning, like with your daughter or so, I'm trying to remember back, there's a really key point also. What was it? You're mentioning that she had to get into a new environment.
She will be transitioning this fall based on her test score. So what I was trying to highlight, and I'm practicing this with her every day, that the cognitives, people with high performance indicators are not necessarily that they will have high social skills. That's a big opportunity for, and there are published research around this, that because they tend to kind of they're almost in their bubble, as we all are. We try to every personality tribe, not even personality, like your types are, have our bubbles around. We're very comfortable in that zone.
Yeah.
So how do you break that?
Yeah. So there's a phrase I like to use, because it's just the truth of it's obvious when a person thinks about it, but you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So one of the key things that we taught our kids, and which I've applied consistently, even in some really bad work environments over the last 10 or 15 years, is that you always treat the other person with honor. Okay, you always honor the other person. It means the other person feels valued and appreciated. They have value and worth, even if they're one of the lesser desired people on the team, shall we say. So I've been on a situation where one person was very negative towards another individual, and was like, you know what, we're just going to flip this the other way. We're going to treat you really nice. And the person, in this case, this was really a hard shell type situation. That person never really changed, and the manager would work with the individual and try to get to the issue of, why are you being so hard-nosed with these other 1 or 2 people on the team? And there was never any resolution on that. So, no resolution happens at times. Because that gets really difficult for the management and the team to work with. And we'll look at levels of conflict. That was a situation that was intractable, not retractable. So when we go through these various slides here that we've got in this section, we'll look at the conflict and how to walk through that. But the key point is, how do I respect or honor another person? For our kids, they said, even if that person doesn't treat you well, even if your sister doesn't treat you well, you still need to honor her and respect her.
I try to teach my kids that, if you don't be friends with everybody, you should be friendly, because you're only making yourself miserable. You go to the workplace, and why would you want to go to workplace and make yourself miserable going to the workplace? So I always try to just be friendly.
It's difficult when pride gets in the way.
That is what gets in the way.
They just don't want to, I'm not.
You gotta be humble, that pride, and they call that, if you look in the business world, you wanna figure out how to serve your customers well, you wanna figure out how to have people serving each other well inside your organization. You wanna have people that are in a domain of expertise that I don't know as the business owner, so that they can work with each other. Serving the other individual is really a big part of any successful business. It's really key. Okay, active listening. Anything else going in here? All right, we've talked. Oh, all right, this third bullet, listener does not have to agree with the speaker. One of the best phrases I found for hitting that neutral sweet spot when you don't agree, it's not the right time to express disagreement, is just say, that's interesting.
That will get old fast.
Yeah.
Then change subject.
Potentially change subject, yeah. Okay, so slide 201 here. Let's see. This goes without saying, as we've talked through this, the idea is to get people to open up, make them comfortable staying and speaking what's on their mind, even if you disagree with it, even if I disagree with it. Interpreting body language correctly. I got informed by a person of Indian descent is like, when you fold your arms like this, in the European culture, that basically means I'd like you to stop talking soon because you're wasting my time. I'd like to do something more important with my time now. And in the Indian culture, if you cross your arms like this, that's a sign of respect to the other individual. And I think it was Indian culture. It might have been Chinese culture, but pretty sure it was Indian.
See, there are so many variations to.
Even in the Indian subcontinent,
It's a big place.
Yeah.
I'm from the east of the country, raised in the northern part of the country, and so these cultural interjections, they come here, and it's majorly from the southern part of the country.
Mm-hmm.
The tech consultants. So yeah, but those are my learning points too.
Yeah. I learned the word club when it was just after being on conference calls for like a month. It's like it's trying to figure out these guys in Bangalore keep using the word club. These guys and gals, and it's like
Club.
Club. CLUB. No, it's club it. I'm thinking, well, we're not talking about beating anything. So after a while, it means to group things together. They just say club it, group it together. That was their vernacular. I know that's just a Southern India Bangalore type of trait. But.
In my culture too, when somebody is talking to you, you don't look so intensely or look into the person's eyes or face. It's assumed to be disrespectful if the person is of seniority or older than you. You don't look into the person's face. But here in the United States, you got to look at the person's
Eye contact.
Yeah. So when I came first, there was that problem. And I don't look at people. I was then a fluid power engineer, serving customers in the field. Sometimes they come and I teach them. Mm-hmm. So they send me to a course to go study something they call the power of the voice.
Okay.
And the woman the whole course is geared towards looking into people's eyes without feeling shy.
Okay, so that's very countercultural to what you had experienced growing up. So these are the things that the Agile project lead needs to be able to bring together. I mean, the Agile project lead in today's world really needs to have a good list of characterizations. Here's what's common for, literally for every geographic part of the world where the team is interacting from, or from where the people ethnically have their growing up years. And that cannot be overemphasized as a critical piece.
I have a question. the ACP is just trained on the process via Scrum Master Agile product. That's a whole nother certification, correct? Or not?
There is a Scrum Master certification separate from ACP.
Right, that's what I'm asking. I was 99% sure, but
Mhm.
because, I mean, we're going a lot into this, what a Scrum Master will do, and we want it at the high level, just so when you,
No, but those words are interchangeable though, right?
The,
The
participant.
ACP lead or the Agile
Yes.
lead.
correct, from a roles perspective, he is asking from a certification exam
Yeah,
perspective.
Yeah, that's a.
We're not, on the exam, they will ask you questions, what's the Scrum Master's role? And some of the
Mhm.
techniques, but it's not, it's a whole other thing that actually certifies a Scrum Master, because you have to understand.
Yeah. Technically, you could get, after we're done here, you could get certified as a Scrum Master.
It's a different.
Because ACP is much broader and it covers Scrum completely. I mean, I make sure that all of those Scrum terms are in this class.
Okay.
So technically, you don't need to take any additional training. You could just do the ACP and then do the Scrum Master exam.
So this is more, ACP is more valued, obviously.
Yeah, broader. Yeah, it's much broader. You know, for anybody that's not going to be a Scrum Master, you always take the ACP, and the ACP is perfectly sufficient. So,
It was interesting, Capital One does Scrum, and I brought up, I was going for an ACP certification. She didn't even know what that was, and she leads like 20 Scrum teams.
oh, really? Yeah, and you know, that's so I would take a situation like that and flip it around in terms of saying, I'm ACP certified, so you got certification, or even saying I'm ACP trained, which gives me the ability to, you know, look at ways to strengthen the way the Agile work is currently being performed. Because people that are in Scrum, they have this tunnel vision and all they can see is Scrum. And there's like, you know, there's another almost dozen, I mean, exaggerating aside, there's almost a dozen different, you know, aisles in the grocery store that are not called Scrum. So why do you stay in the aisle that's Scrum? And don't go visit the other aisles. Maybe you'll find something that you like or something that's appropriate. All right, so active listening, really key. Tone of voice, body language. We could dive into this more, but I'd like to move on to it. I think we spent enough time with it. Mentions retention is the second step in the listening process. You know, comprehension and retention. These are bullets that are about this model that we drew on the whiteboard. Okay. All right, get into self-assessment here. At the start of next class, we're going to lead off with the addendum that I hand out because it has some good diagrams and pictures in it. Okay, it summarizes emotional intelligence in a much more compact form. So some of these slides I'm going to skip through a little bit fast because I know it's coming in the first day on Friday, the first few minutes. Okay. But self-assessment is a big deal. Myers-Briggs is a common tool that's used. Uline is a company that they use it constantly. They're trying to look for certain profiles of people relative to roles in their company. They follow this like dogmatically. Okay, in terms of what type of people are supposed to fit with what types of positions and responsibilities. Okay, so I've talked with a number of people. I don't know if anybody here who's taken Myers-Briggs. Okay, so you both have. Okay, so I've heard that.
I've taken a version of Myers-Briggs. It's called the Brickman. It's
Okay.
the same. I was given as part of my package with the outplacement service. They gave me that, and I took it last year in April.
Okay, so has that been found useful or not useful? For
Yes,
the
I've
three that are-
used it in interviews to show my personality trait and you know, the kind of skills that I kind of have, and also the teams I'm attuned to work with. So it's a powerful tool. If you just show the summary sheet, people take attention to those.
Okay. So, and I've heard the flip side too, where people say it was a waste of time.
It could be.
I'm one of those who say it's a waste of time because what it said, I already knew. So maybe I knew that, maybe I was a good self-assessor.
Yeah, that could very well be. So the value of this from a guy who was teaching leadership at the Air Force Academy in Colorado for 10 years. It's a person that I've interacted with just a couple times. He was saying that the big value here was to be able to figure out how the people are going to respond in times of stress and conflict. So that's the specific value that he identified out of this. People that have used it in an organizational sense, taken it, like a friend of mine who was, he was one of the, not quite vice president, but he was high up in the Motorola Labs area. And he's like, yeah, we use that. And I was like, or we took it and it was like, what do we do with it now? So wasn't able to use it much. Our emotional intelligence, there's the ability model and the trait model. I'm going to be showing you those in the handout, but I want to get this emotional intelligence concept in our minds. I like to duplicate things, from 2 classes in a row here. All right, so there's also a mixed model of emotional intelligence. And we were speaking earlier about IQ versus EQ. There's emotional quotient. So even though it's the same EI here, that's mostly what it's referred to, but EQ, emotional quotient, is also the other aspect. That's a synonym. All right, so IQ versus EQ. If you're voted most successful because of how smart you are, the studies that have been done, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, et cetera, say the IQ is a weak predictor. The EQ is the dominant predictor of success. Because if you know how to work the social skills, and they actually found it by a factor of 4, it's more it's the variable that is that defines how the person's going to do in their work environment. So EQ is more important than IQ. Obviously, both are needed, but in terms of importance and impact, I should say not importance, but in terms of impact, the EQ matters a lot. Matters more. All right. So the ability model. This is all about perceiving. Perceiving ourselves properly and perceiving others properly. All right, so we'll just use a corner of the board right there. These don't have any diagrams shown on it. Diagrams. I'm going to just bring it up. What I'm going to bring up on the screen what I'm going to show on bring a hard copy form on Friday. Just because the picture's worth 1,000 words, and it takes me less time to bring it up than to draw. So these diagrams are not in your notes here. The traits model is the one that I like to work with. If you do a comparison between the traits model and the abilities model, the traits model has literally just a quick bullet list of what's in each of the 4 quadrants. So if we take a look at this one, which is reasonably clear. Hopefully the overlay goes away. But you have self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, and social skills. All right. That's one way of looking at it. There's some variety here. I usually think of it in terms of self-awareness, which is the same. Social awareness or others awareness, self-management, and then relation management. This is the term I like to use because this is all about relationship management. And the arrows, I've drawn this on the board maybe 3 classes ago or something like that. So as you think through think through each of these. You're not going to be tested on each one of these attributes or traits. You just generally have to know what is the structure of this 2x2 grid. All right, so if we start from that perspective, what's the structure of it? The first column is about what? Yeah, and the second column is about
Others are social.
right. And then if you look at it from a rows perspective, and you're going to find some variation in this, but these two examples have the same definition. There's recognition of self, recognition of others, the ability to recognize and understand. And then the bottom row is regulation, regulating myself, from self-management, and basically regulating in a positive way the relationships around me in my work setting. Right, so that's the way that you need to understand emotional intelligence from an ACP exam perspective. What are the rows, the columns, and what's each of the quadrants focused on? And then you don't need to know or memorize each of the traits, but it's helpful to be able to know at least something out of them. You don't need to know the full list, but at least to know one or two traits in order to be able to say, oh, okay, that's what self-management is. And the one I'd memorize it, okay, transparency is under self-management. So I like that particular word, so that sticks for me. So emotional intelligence, who's seen this model before? Anybody? Okay. So it's a really, really powerful model to help develop individuals within your area of influence. So it's great for developing kids too. So. Okay. So the ability model is also in that diagram. Maybe I should have flipped off it too quickly here. If you look at this is traits with bullets underneath. It's a very, very small number of bullets. If you look at the abilities model, which I think I stripped out of here because it's usually not, I left it in here. Okay, the abilities model is just a statement, it's not traits. So self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand your moods and emotions and drives as well as their effect on others. Okay, so there's the abilities model is just a statement of definition. It's like, okay, that's useful. I'm a person that's like, give me a bullet list, give me a sentence. Right? So I take the traits model and just prefer to work off of that. This gives you somewhat of a different sense of how to just look at emotional intelligence. Both models are valid, just different. How do you say related to each other? All right. When we look at collaboration on slide 208, we got two types of collaboration. There's customer collaboration and team collaboration. So from the manifesto, we got customer collaboration over contract negotiations. There's another principle of business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. Okay. So collaboration is a major theme reflected in that value pair as well as principle. What are the aspects of collaboration that we've seen so far? Because we've spent our time in the class. What are the aspects of Agile collaboration? Was it?
Continuous.
In a weaker sense, continuous I wouldn't really put under it. Collaboration is a major thread or theme in Agile. Continuous is a separate major thread or theme in Agile. That's continuous feedback, continuous integration, continuous delivery if you're in Kanban. The collaboration is what? Give me examples of collaboration.
Paired programming, yeah.
What's
Paired programming?
paired programming? Okay, if you take the extreme programming and you've got one person looking over the shoulder of the other person, That's a good example of collaboration. Pretty tight collaboration too at that point.
Feedbacks. Feedbacks, when you take feedbacks from the customer and then kind of integrate that to a resolution.
Yep. So anything that's feedback oriented is an activity of collaboration. It's a communication exchange of collaboration.
Grooming? Grooming based on feedback?
Yep. Grooming.
I'm stealing her.
Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
refining.
Yeah.
Feedback and refining.
Right. So think of collaboration very broadly. There's dozens and dozens of examples in the Agile space for collaboration. Adaptive leadership. All right, so this is considered one of the characterizations of Agile, is to have adaptive leadership as opposed to traditional leadership, where traditional is more of a, you as the manager tell the individuals what to do and you direct the activity. So adaptive leadership is, it follows that theory we looked at on day one, theory Y, where I'm just gonna trust y'all to get the job done and say, here's the objective, y'all figure out how to get there. Get it done. All right, so it's a very much create the environment and trust them to be successful. All right, so think of Agile, think of adaptive leadership in that sense. Okay. So this person leads by serving. There's serving, meaning providing the environment for good relationships. They're providing a good physical environment for people to work together as well. It's adaptive leadership gets expanded heavily. I want to take a couple notes on this. So adaptive leadership also uses a two-grid. I guess people maybe psychologists have figured out, okay, everybody can handle a grid of two. So everything tends to be grid two in general. But personally, I think that seems to be intentional. The adaptive leadership, when you look at what it is, it's a little bit more than this one slide that we just looked at. It starts again with the self perspective is the column, similar to emotional intelligence. And then the other column, instead of being others, it's the system. And when you see the word system here, think MBA perspective. Okay, this is an MBA perspective, Master's in Business Administration. This is the system here means the organizational system of how people are grouped together in order for that company to provide the product or service that generates its revenue. So organization. When you're looking at self, know your bandwidth, know your role in the system, know your purpose, exercising adaptive leadership, this is what it looks like. It's willing to exceed your authority, and you can see that from the view of the Agile project lead. That person is supposed to educate everybody in the organization. It's like, who cares what their position is, the other person. Right, so you got to be willing to step over what's maybe traditionally viewed as your authority boundary. Got one piece of the mess, your life is difficult. It's like, something goes wrong, hey, okay, so I won't do it that way next time. Right? All right, stay in the game. It's not easy. And when you're in a fluid type environment, the whole concept of adaptive leadership is that there's a lot of unknowns. Okay, so the next model here is this leadership framework. So this is leadership architecture. And by the way, Ron Heifetz is the one who put this together. It's got adapted into the Agile practices.
Orchestrate concept means that you are really trying to create conflicts between team members.
Yes. So that point is repeated in the framework right here.
Is it to create healthy competition?
It's not really so I'd say take the competition part out of it, but it's to create a healthy environment. If you look at areas where conflict is good, versus not good. If there's conflict about the product, you actually want a low to medium amount of conflict in that space, because this is, what are we supposed to be doing? If people are not putting ideas on the table of what to do, there's no conflict. That just means somebody's directing all the activity. There's not going to be any conflict, at least not any visible conflict. If you're in a brainstorming session, that's an example of good conflict. People are throwing different ideas together on the table. We've got to go through and do a pro-cons analysis to assess how we're going to package this set of ideas into something understandable that we can all agree on. All right, so anything regarding the product, it's good to have conflict there as long as it's on the low to medium side. In terms of process, that should be on the low side. Because you've got to keep thinking through, how can we change things? How can we make things different? Change is always uncomfortable. It doesn't matter whether change. I remember from the class back in like 1991 or so. The class is all about managing change as a research organization at that time, which is supposed to be, its job and mission is to cause change. And the rule out of that was all change will be resisted, period. It doesn't matter whether it's for the better or for the worse, all change will be resisted. It's just human behavior, human dynamic. So for the process, the way we go about doing our work, you always want some low level of conflict happening there. If people just keep doing the same thing over and over, one quarter after another quarter, they'll never improve. You gotta have some conflict. Like somebody's got to raise their hand and say, I think this can be done better. Wait a minute, what's wrong with that? All right, then you go into relationships. Relationships is where we normally think of conflict, and you want that to be zero. The reality is that during storming, which is at the top of the whiteboard, it's going to be there. Just keep it low. Anything more than low becomes dangerous, obviously. So that the goal is zero, but the reality is not zero. So in terms of this orchestrating conflict or cooking conflict, from the Agile perspective, that's viewed positively. You want to have conflict as long as it's good conflict. So on your notes, or however you're taking your notes, adaptive leadership is about creating good conflict. Right, so we started from the little 2x2 grid, and that takes us into the lower left corner of this diagram. We just jump up a little bit here. This get on the balcony. The adaptive leader is the one who says, you know what, I can't see things very good if I'm standing here at street level. I got to see above it. I got to see beyond the horizon. So let me get up on the third story balcony so I can see beyond the horizon. So this is a person.
Then we can push them off easy.
Yeah, boy, you're the first one that came up. You come up with some creative thinking there.
I've never been in a very effective team. They've always been dysfunctional and very, thinking back, it's been very dysfunctional. Never once I was in an effective team.
Wow. Yeah, I've been in that situation.
That's what happens when you do maintenance for 2 years.
I guess so. Yeah. So let's get on the balcony. If you're in a dysfunctional team, you look for somebody you can push over the edge. If you're in a good environment, the whole point there is to be able to see, okay, what could happen? So I tend to, since the mid-90s, I've always been the technical leader in one capacity or another for every project I've worked on. So I don't know, so maybe 8 projects or so since then. So I always picture in my mind, okay, here's the people, here's the ones that are going to be most resistant. Those are the ones I'm going to develop a relationship with first, so that we can get past this storming really fast and make storming be really short. So getting on the balcony is like looking at the people, looking at the technology, and looking at our current products that we have to adjust. Some are like major surgeries to adjust. Right? Identifying the challenge means knowing that, okay, the technical answers are elusive. We don't have them at the start. We need to enable people to find those technical answers. So this is not a routine environment in Agile. Okay. When you look down at creating the holding environment, if you want to tag one other keyword onto adaptive leadership, it's this first bullet, make physical space where adaptive work can be done. And then the second one is manage the relationship or social space as well. So there's the physical space and the social space, so to speak, that are being managed. All right, so adaptive, there's 3 points out of this thing so far. It's that view over the horizon, putting together the environment, both physically, the workspace design, as well as relationally. And adaptive means I'm going to trust the other people to figure out the answers. Give them the environment, and I'm going to make sure that there's some level of conflict in that environment. So you'll get a hard copy on this next week. All right, there's a term in the middle here that we've already seen in Principle 10, work avoidance. It's like, what? It's like, well, how could conflict, why do you want to orchestrate conflict? So what does work avoidance mean right here? What does Principle 10 say?
We avoid unnecessary work.
Yeah, so it's about, right, so this is work avoidance. The Principle 10 is about simplicity. Okay.
Oh, only do the, simple. Just do the simple stuff, don't do the stuff that's not needed.
Yeah, simplicity, the art of maximizing the work not done, is essential. So this is like avoid the work that doesn't need to be done. Things are hard enough the way it is without figuring out more work to do. So don't add to this weight that we're carrying that we're trying to generate a solution for. And just be really distinct about what needs to be carried towards solution, and that which can be parked off on the side. So avoid what can be avoided. There'll be enough work there to do anyway. And then the last major attribute of adaptive leadership is all about really getting people's input from those doing the work, and then providing an environment where it's safe for those people to say, yes, my team came up with this, and I know that's not company policy, but so on. This is what we need to do. So this adaptive leader does not work within the confines of company policy and company culture. This person is going to go off onto the side, create something that's going to be different, break the rules, rearrange the rules. So this person's not running a call center normally. Okay, servant leadership. The items that we put on this whiteboard, a lot of that is oriented around the word servant. Somebody had brought that up earlier, I forget who, but this idea of serving others. So this is in Agile, this concept of servant leadership is something that the Agile project lead has to do. This is what people are looking for. There's a person that I met through MITS here. He's a student. He got a job as a engineering program manager. They were looking for someone that had technical background and somebody that was willing to get Agile established in their company. And the key thing that they were looking for in terms of just work style, interaction with others is, can you be a servant or not? So that, he told me what the main points were in the interview. It's like, oh, that was interesting. Okay. So that this be a servant type thing, for any of you who've read scriptures or so, it's like, what does it say? The greatest among you is the servant. So it's from a biblical perspective, that emphasis of humble and servant, and being willing to serve others is highly endorsed. Agile is no different. So if the Agile project lead needs to can stay as the project lead, there's a key thing in here. They can't get left behind. They got to keep up with the technology. They got to keep up with the team, with the dynamics. Right. So serving is it's a very ongoing activity, and very adaptive to always looking over the horizon. What needs to be done next? And you think about it in a pragmatic perspective. If you have Agile project leads that you're responsible for as a program manager, or if you are an Agile project lead, you got to figure out how to keep yourself relevant. Okay, because after the Scrum team has reached performing, what do you as the Agile project lead going to do?
Draw some pictures. Make graphs. Draw pictures, make graphs.
Okay, so there's a very pragmatic side that I'm trying to emphasize to being a servant. Yeah, you better figure out where there's potential holes that you can fill on their team. Maybe it's doing some of the work, because it's okay for the Agile project lead to actually do some of the work. That's okay. But an Agile project lead is going to become irrelevant within a year if that person doesn't watch what's over the horizon and know how to keep identifying and adding value. So some other points here in servant leadership. And these are what we've talked about early on in the first class or second class, I think it was. So protecting the team from outside distractions. That was one of the points that we had on that diagram where we put down the roles and then had the business stakeholder off on the side. So remember that diagram? Okay. All right, so what's an example of an outside distraction? And this is relevant to stakeholder management. So I want to be able to make sure you don't get this answer wrong on the ACP exam.
They changed the requirement. Well, too far.
So
Completely changed the project.
right. So put a context into that. Completely change the project.
Change request from customer.
The project owner.
You can take them, but you gotta take them. You can't just. I mean, it's kind of.
So I would say, so take what you said and apply it down to, okay, the customer is talking with the development team member.
Yeah.
Right, so that's where the Agile project lead would go in and say, you're distracting my developer. Don't do that. Yeah.
Or,
obviously, you'd say it more tactfully than what I just summarized. Yeah, you go through that listening, so why, I'm just wondering why you're needing to talk to the
Schedule
developer.
meetings to talk to him one on
And then, okay, so this is what I understand that you need. Okay, so I'm wondering, can you do it this way instead? I mean, that's the way you're talking about. You don't just say no. I summarized it in 3 words that would actually take about 15 minutes conversation with the stakeholder.
Or perhaps the customer should not be part of the daily stand-ups because those are kind of, prime time slots, very sequenced and focused. So that can be a source of distraction.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah. If because of information there, the customer keeps coming back to development team members, it's like the Agile project lead could suggest, I think you need to come once a week instead.
I had a situation where the hardware that we needed had a defect in it, which delayed our user trial start day. So, but that's not our team's responsibility, that's a hardware team's responsibility because we're software. But that kind of distracted us. So basically I took the ownership to go work with the hardware team and let the team continue working on their software on a different device that we already had working. So I don't know if that's also kind of an example.
That's a really good example. I've done that same thing where, our team is like, we're on time. The other team is behind. So, the obvious thing to do is like go over and help the other team or the other teams.
They call
You know,
it-
don't just ask somebody to crack the whip over them, physically go over there and help them accomplish the mutual objective. Okay, so that's a good example as well. All right, so think through these things, and when we get together on Friday, we're going to be looking at some example ACP questions. You know, this is a good frame of mind because it's rich with lots of different questions that can be thrown on the table from an exam perspective, because there's lots of variety of people interacting with people here, especially with stakeholder management.
Does that map a career path for, I mean, next slide. So it says serve each individual and improve their skill base. I assume it means each individual, therefore the team, and map a career path. Is that for each individual or for the Agile project leader himself, which you say he has to do anyway, because it's the end of the job?
Both.
Okay, it's both.
Yeah, it definitely includes the team. I mean, the Agile project leader is really taking care of those on the team. And I've done this with every team that I've worked on. I look for, okay, what can this individual be doing that's different than their current skills, but just enough to stretch that person. And you get wonderful results when you're willing to get people stretched. And it's easy to do when you're in new product development. It's 80% of all my projects are always new product development, so it's easy to find stuff to stretch people, including myself. So
This is hard.
yeah, in the maintenance arena, it's tougher to stretch people.
Throw them off the belt.
Yeah,
Sorry. I should remember it.
We'll probably remember that phrase for a while.
Oh, yeah.
So improving skill base, this is looking over the horizon. What are the other projects that are coming down the road that the team is going to be taking on? What can they do now to improve their skills towards that? Their skills of interacting with each other, the skills of accepting each other, working with the product and processes. It's a rich area. Usually the processes are somewhere between bad and horrible on every project I've ever worked on. So you got to go craft how we're going to do our way of work with some other individuals very frequently. So there's always opportunity. Soft skills. So this is the big message: the soft skills. Okay. Agile is all about the soft skills. We'll get into negotiation later on. So these other slides go through pretty quickly. But we're at 1:30 right now. So when we get together on Friday, we'll finish off with section 4. We'll do section 5. Section 5 is actually really short. And there is nothing in section 6 of your notebook that's worth our time going over, because it's all a list of words. So if you want a good reference to study from, go to section 6 and read every page there. You should be able to identify the definition of every one of those words and see relationships between the terms and concepts that are reflected by those words. So see you Friday. Hopefully this has been a fun session. This session gets a little bit different than the others. It's away from the project mechanics and into the people interactions.
We keep bringing the family people or the unemployment people, so I've been here. I'm like,
I just don't want to.
Friday. We made a trip up here. Oh, yeah, I would want that too. Nice.
So before, how were your other teams before coming to BOB? Oh, are they similar to?